welcome to the first Open Science Seminar for 2021, organized by Think Open at CIMEC, the Open Science Initiative at CIMEC. Thank you all for being here, and a special thank to our speaker, Elena Gilia. She has a PhD and master degree in librarianship and in public institution management. She's currently the head of the Open Access Office at the University of Turin. She's also a member of the Committee on Open Science at the Ministry for Higher Education and Research, MIUR. She was a member of several national working groups and other European working groups as well. She animates several, I have to say, lots of open science and open access initiatives all over the web and all over the nation and the Europe as well. I have to say that there is this mailing list, which is Open Access Italy, where every day I could find new content which is worth discussing, thought-provoking, useful for my everyday job and for your everyday research routines as well. So today, she'll be talking about open science, new perspectives on evaluations. Please, Elena Gilia, floor is yours, and we'll have room for questions at the end of the talk.
Thank you, Vittorio, for the presentation, and thank you for the invitation. So, as I was saying, thank you for the invitation. It's so important to speak about open science and let's say every aspect of open science, because in Italy it's still sort of, unknown matter. The slides will be available. Actually, they are already available on Zenodo, which is the catch-all repository at CERN. With this link, I will put the link also in the chat. Unfortunately, you will have only the PDF version, not the PPT, because I'm working from home, and my connection from home doesn't support the upload of heavy slides like mine. As you can see here, you can reuse my slides. You can also reuse my photos. So the background of the slides comes from my pictures, so feel free to reuse. And for the same reason, I won't use my camera. So that's me, just to introduce myself for those who I've never met before. So the road ahead today is not a simple task to talk about open science and evaluation in like half an hour or less than half hour. I will try first of all to set the scene. So why do we need a new evaluation system? What's going on in Europe about that? Because I think we need to breathe some fresh air, as our national agency, ANVUR, is sort of, let's say, keeping us underground with respect to what's going on outside Italy. Of course, we will see what's going on in Italy and why open science, open innovation are linked, what's EOSC and what are fair data, because we need to be ready also for this environment. And the most important thing today will be to have a different idea of what is a research output. First of all, a question, and please keep this in mind while I will be talking. And the question is, why do you do research? Please keep it in mind, because you will see, I hope, while I'm speaking, it's important to remind yourself why in the first place you choose to be a researcher. And there is also a spoiler alert. You might find some of the following slides disturbing or provocative, but as you will see, when I make an assertion, there is always a source, okay? So I give you data and not just opinion. So we have some lessons learned from COVID, because we need to contextualize open science. In this article, which you see here, we are opening everything. Scientists share coronavirus data in an unprecedented way to contain trade disease, which means that our normal behavior is to put barriers to science. And you know that commercial publishers made open the articles and the research about COVID, but for a specific, just for the duration of the emergency, just for the duration of the pandemic. So please read this tweet by Heather Joseph, who is the chair of Spark USA. It's unreal, acknowledging that making these papers open access and paper and results will help speed progress and save lives, but at the same time, only doing it for a limited time and for a single disease. So they are opening COVID-related papers, but for instance, not papers related to climate change or to Alzheimer or to cancer or to violence on women. Do you think these are less important topics? Of course not. And this is another important argument by John Rurik, the champion, the chair of Plan S. We will be talking about Plan S at the end of the talk. It's important to make everything open, because we don't know which research paper or data or result that today remain inaccessible could inspire solution and bright ideas for tomorrow challenges. So you can't limit access. And this is the best. An article published on Nature last February, calling all coronavirus researchers, keep sharing, stay open. And then you can see here a very nice label with subscribe, okay? So it's really an oxymoron. Because today, what are we doing? We are paying with public money, and I underline with public money, we are paying publishers to lock up a content you gave for free because you are not paid. Either you write a paper or you review a paper. And we are paying, and then, of course, in time of epidemic, of pandemic, we still have to beg publishers for access to our own research. And we don't pay, it's not cheap. It doesn't come cheap, because in 2016, we paid $7.6 billion all over the world in subscriptions, okay? So this is an important message. Today, reading is not for free. So if you read a paper, it's because your library is paying a subscription. And in the subscription, let's say in the subscription model or world, we are paying today from $3,800 to $5,000 per article, but we are paying to close the article, because due to the subscription, if, let's say, a practitioner or an innovator or a startup or a small and medium enterprise want to access your paper, of course they can't. And we are generating, with public money, 38% of net gain for the biggest publisher, Elsevier. Now we have 10 billion in the system in 2021, and the publishers are asking for more, okay? So it's really a system which is not functional to the interest of science. And what do we get in change for 10 billion every year in subscription? We get in change 9 to 18 months average time for publication, Look at this tweet from Paola Masuzzo, an Italian researcher and an international open science advocate. Today, I witnessed the celebration of a research article published in a famous and glam journal after 2.5 years of revision. I do feel happy for the authors, of course, but I cannot help wondering what's there to celebrate in such a slow scientific dissemination. And can you imagine this during a pandemic, 9 to 8 months or 2.5 years before getting published? 179% is the increase of self-citation in Italy after the VQR, the national exercise on research assessment, was enacted. We became an international case study. 70% is the ratio of unreproducible research in some fields. And by the way, if you are interested in let's say, in setting a reproducible workflow, please address this Turing Way, which is an handbook for reproducible data science. The most scaring is this 43%, because Houston, we have a problem. 43% is the ratio of retractions for fraud. I mean, for scientific misconduct. And if you want to have a look at Retraction Watch, you see also they have a ranking of the most, let's say, vicious researchers. You see the first one, 183 retractions, then 136 and counting. So it's not just one rotten apple, it's a sort of systemic way. We have these stories about, again, scientific misconduct. The case of Joachim Bolt is the most serious one, because he was studying a molecule. And if you look at systematic reviews about this molecule and similar ones, it seems that the risk, let's say the side effects are the same. But if you keep the 136 retractions out of the systematic review, you will have an increased risk of death and renal failure. So retractions are not just an academic issue. They can have an effect on our life. But what's the problem? The problem is here, and that's why it's important today for our topic, so for evaluation, because we have a direct correlation between the number of retractions and the impact factor of the journal. So the higher the impact factor, the higher the number of retractions. Because, you know, if you have to, let's say, to fabricate or falsificate your data, you will do it just to be published in Nature and not in an obscure national or local journal. The issue of retractions and the correlation between the number of retraction and the so-called prestige of the journal is so huge that the current system has been called the natural selection of bad science. And if you are interested, you can read this article. And why is that? Because evaluation became an obsession. This is the Royal Society of London speaking during a workshop held in 2015. Evaluation became an obsession. And speaking about young researchers, not only we are failing to provide right incentives, we are providing perverse ones. And they are quoting the Goddard's law, which is a statistical law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And people game the system at every level according to these criteria. If you want to have a look at this paper, Performance-Driven Culture is Ruining Scientific Research, they tell you the Cobra effect when when British were still ruling in India, they had a huge increase in Cobra all over the country. So Indians were paid for every dead cobra they handed. So they started breeding cobras. And it's exactly what is happening today with this perverse evaluation criteria. And if you want to have a look at whatever researchers can imagine and can think of to game the system, please go and have a look at this book edited by Mario Biagioli, Gaming the Matrix. And if you look at this one is an experiment within the community of chemistry. They asked researcher, in your opinion, which is the most cited paper, which is the most significant, the paper you would share most widely. And the colored bars are the actual answer of researchers. The gray bars are the corresponding number of citations to the paper in Scopus and Web of Science. So there is no relation at all, because of course you cite the paper of your friend, you cite the paper the editor asks you to cite. So even citations are absolutely not reliable. And look at how many indicators we have. This is a sort of periodic table of scientometric indicators, just to give you the idea of this obsession about evaluation. But this system does not work, okay? If you want to have a look, this is a TED Talk. She is Rachel Ainsworth, an astrophysicist, and she will explain in 15 minutes why research culture is broken and how open science can fix it. Because let's be clear, what's the purpose of scholarly communication? And please keep in mind my initial question, why do you do research? This is the introduction of the first report on the European Open Science Cloud, written by Barr and Mons. Researchers, funders, and publishers, I always thought that meant making things public, keep each other hostage in a deadly embrace by continuing to conduct, publish, fund, and judge science in the same way as in the past century. And so far, no one seems to be able to break this deadlock. So this is what we are going to talk about in the next slide, because the purpose of publications is to share insights for the benefit of humanity. But look at this. If we have created a generation of scholars who are just in it for the glory of papers in glamorous journals and not to do research that changes the world a little bit, then we really are in trouble. So maybe here open science might help. I know you are familiar with open science because this is a series of conference talk about open science, but that's my definition, the definition I like and which is functional for what we are going to say. Open science stands for the transition to a new, more open and participatory way of conducting, publishing, and evaluating scholarly research. And I underline these three words because they are each of them is important. So open science is a different way of conducting, publishing, and evaluating. And today we will focus on evaluating. Okay. Central to this concept is the goal of increasing cooperation and transparency in all research stages. And this is achieved by sharing research data, publication, tools, and results as early and open as possible. Open science leads to more robust scientific results, to more efficient research, and faster access to scientific results for everyone, with, of course, a greater societal and economic impact. This is another good point on open science. Open science depends on open minds, and it's also it's endeavoring to preserve the right of others to reach independent conclusions about your data and work. It's an ongoing practice and not a checkbox at the end. And this is important, all the more so in the ANVUR perspective and all the, all the forms you have to fill in for ANVUR. And this is important as well. We will reach open science if we have open outputs and open infrastructures, but if the factor, meaning the cultural change, is 0, the results will be 0 as well. And if you have 4 minutes, please watch this video. It's a laboratory in Canada, in Montreal, a neuroscience laboratory. They decided not to patent anything, which is a topic, let's say, very mainstream in these days about the vaccines, So they decided not to patent, and every night they put the data, perfectly fair, perfectly anonymized, the data of their patient online, because their aim is to get a treatment before and not to get published. Okay, so this is a really important example, good practice in open science. This is one slide from the Open Science Conference yesterday in Berlin. Anna Persisch was presenting the next UNESCO recommendation on open science. And look here, open science can be a true game changer in bridging the science, technology, and innovation gaps between and within countries and fulfilling the human right to science. This is perfectly summarize what open science is, because knowledge is a human right. So anyone has the right to access and to benefit from knowledge and from science and from scientific discovery. And of course, open science has a link with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. This is the rainbow of open science. So you see, this was created by Bianca Kramer and Jérôme Bosman at the University of Utrecht. They divided the research workflow into these steps. But as you can see, for each step, you have a tool if you want to open all the steps of your research. So technically, we are already there. What is needed is the cultural shift. And all the more so, what is needed is your first step. So you can start today in opening up at least one step in your research. But this is important as well. Every and each of this step should count as research output. At the moment, we are focusing only on publishing, okay? Only, so where are we? Only on publishing, only on publications and article and journal papers, okay? So every let's say step, every component of your research workflow should count as a research output. This is the important message of today. For instance, why aren't you evaluated on the reviews you carried? Because you know that a reviewer is chosen because he or she is the expert in his or her field. So it's a sort of acknowledging that you are the expert in this field. And if you write a thorough review, it takes a lot of time. So they should count as pieces of knowledge. And you see here, it's a sort of meta slide because it's an article about open peer review and is at the same time an example of open peer review, because here you can access the reviews, you can access the comments of reviewers, and they are citable because they have a digital object identifier, okay? So they should count as well as research outputs. This is the ideal of open science. Again, it's a slide from Paola Masuzzo. her dream is to put science back at the heart of society. And we have seen in this time of pandemic how important it is to have science, to let's say, to create again trust in science. But to reach this target, we need to make open not only the final results, not only papers, because if you think of it, when you just add, let's say, paper journal on a paper-based system, it was unavoidable. So all you could do was to publish, let's say, the synthesis of your research in form of a paper. But today on the web, we can give access to the whole workflow. I mean, the data, the code, the software, the protocols, whatever. So we can give access and we can open the whole workflow and not just the final synthesis in form of a paper. Then we have to redefine the concept of excellence, okay? Because the real excellence, for instance, is to a true leadership. The real concept of excellence should rely on mentorship. Did you create a school? How many students? How many, let's say, did you manage to teach a method to your students? So that should be the concept of excellence. And of course, we need to invest in community-driven infrastructure and not leave commercial publisher to take control over scholarly communication. And we also should redefine the concept of failure, because in science, failure is crucial. Science is a cumulative process, so it goes by even on the mistakes, on negative results. But no mainstream journal today will ever publish an article on negative results, okay? And this is another crucial message, which it's important also for evaluation purposes. We should shift the focus from the final output to the practice of doing research. So am I reproducible? Am I doing responsible research? What about the integrity of my research process? So that should be evaluated and not just the final output in form of article or paper or whatever, okay? So we should shift from the outputs to the practice. How do you do science? And that should be evaluated. If you want to listen to this webinar held by Paola, unfortunately it's in Italian, but I think she is very convincing. And on this perspective, it was recently published, this Plan I. Maybe you have heard about Plan S, which is about the shift towards open access journals. Plan I is about the shift towards a sustainable research information infrastructure. And yesterday, Maria Chiara Pievatolo published on ROARS an article in Italian discussing Plan I, and why Plan I should be our target, why this infrastructure should be our target. Because the current system, which we have just seen, is very costly, 10 billion in subscription every year, and which gives us really very few services. It's just a PDF online coming in 9 or 18 months. On top of that, there are no rules for the procurement. So we are paying with public money, but we are not following the same rules as we follow, for instance, to buy a pen or to buy, let's say, a computer for the office, okay? Because the situation is a situation of monopoly. So commercial publishers can ask the price they want, and we have to pay. And this is perpetuating the inefficiency of a system which is functional to interest, which of course are not the interest of science and discovery. So the proposal in Plan I is to create a public platform just to share and disseminate research, which we can do technically, because we have a lot of, for instance, for platforms for preprints, okay? And then we can associate to preprints an open peer review system. So technically, again, technically, we are already there. The problem is the cultural shift, or better, the political choice, the political decision to go for a community-driven infrastructure, okay? And in Plan I, you will find another important concept. So let's pay for services and not for prestige. Because at the moment, if we are paying $15,000 in subscription, in annual subscription for a journal, we are actually paying for prestige and not for the real costs of publishing. So why are we trapped in such a dysfunctional system? Because of evaluation. So here we go with a series of examples of why evaluation is distorting this system. This is Plan S. I don't know why Plan S is particularly adverse in Italy. Maybe because of a lot of misconception or prejudice. I don't know. But anyway, this is the preamble. So the why Plan S was created in 2018. Plan S was issued by a coalition of funders. Okay, so here are the funders speaking. Our collective duty of care is for the science system as a whole, and researchers must realize that they are doing a gross disservice to the institution of science if they continue to report their outcomes in publication that will be locked behind paywalls. We also understand that researchers may be driven to do so by a misdirected reward system, which puts emphasis on the wrong indicators, for instance, journal impact factor. We therefore commit to fundamentally revise the incentive and reward system of science. So this is the preamble of Plan S. This is another important document from the International Science Council. Please notice the date, the year it was issued, which is 2014, and nothing has changed since then. These metrics, in turn, affect the behavior of researchers, such as their choice of journal. They contribute to the maintenance of high journal prices, promote intense competition rather than openness and sharing, and this is more important, fail to recognize research contributions such as the production of datasets, software, code, blogs, wikis, and forums. Even in our national research evaluation exercise, the VQR, now we have a section about the so-called third mission, which when you translate it in English, the third mission remains something, let's say, cryptical. It's difficult to explain to a non-Italian speaker what the third mission is. But anyway, so in this section about the third mission, wikis should be, and the let's say the contribution to Wikipedia should be evaluated, because Wikipedia is made of, let's say, trustworthy contributions by trustworthy authors. So who better than an academic to do so? Okay, so this again should be evaluated. Now we have to talk for 2 slides about preprints, because they are functional to the next evaluation is the key reference. You know what preprints are, so it's publishing your research as soon as it's finished. Okay, so without the official peer review, there is a growing number of preprint servers, like, you know, archive, the physics preprint is famous, but now we have bioarchive, medRxiv, psycharchive, so a lot of preprint servers. And during the pandemic, the value of preprints became clear. As you can see here, the famous research paper about the T-cell mediated immunity, which is important, it's at the basis of the vaccine, was published in June on this preprint server. It was downloaded more than 100,000 times, and it was published in a journal in September, at the end of September. So with a preprint, we gained 3 months. Okay, so why should we keep this crucial information hidden for 3.5 months? Preprints prove to be so vital for sharing information that in this article, if you take the time to read it, they should become the new normal, at least in, they say, in medical research. Of course, you need to do it right, because just the preprint is not enough. Preprint is just, let's say, the first step in doing open science, because you need to associate also the data. So in this preprint, Open Science Save Lives, Lessons Learned from COVID, you will find also the mistakes, okay? The mistakes in sharing just the preprint, because some preprint were retracted. But it does not mean that we don't need peer review, okay? Just to be clear, I'm not saying that we don't need peer review. I'm saying that we can do peer review in a, let's say, less archaic way. So today, post-peer review is possible and is much more efficient. So traditional peer review keeps a paper, let's say, sealed, sequestered for months, okay? If you publish the preprint and then you go for open peer review, you have 1,000 eyes scrutinizing your work, okay? So it's much more efficient. You remember the 2 papers about hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of COVID-19. They were retracted because the authors weren't able to provide the raw data, okay? But they were retracted upon readers' suspects, because they were published after traditional peer review in 2 of the most prestigious medical journals, the Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine. Okay, so this is the difference between traditional peer review, which is time consuming, which keeps sequestrated for months or years the paper, and open peer review, because with open peer review, all the community can judge and can scrutinize your work. So evaluation is the key. Here we have, that's why I was talking about preprint. The scientific communication system has hardly been modernized in recent decades. Delays between submission and publications are excessively long. By the time they appear, some research is already out of date. In addition, publication costs are far too high in relation to the real costs. The pitfall, so the reason why we are perpetuating this, let's say, dysfunctional system, lies in the way researchers are evaluated. Assessment urges scientists to focus on writing articles as if it were a goal in itself. This type of evaluation does not do justice to the merits of the researcher, and its effect on science are perverse. A plethora of publication and a decline in their quality. So this is the Rector Emeritus of the University of Liège speaking. Again, here you have a lot of European Commission documents calling for a change in assessment and evaluation and reward system, but still publication are the pillars of research evaluation. Look at this report published by the European University Association. As you can see, 90% is the rate of institution considering research publication important for research assessment. And look at open science, it's just for 12% very important and 26 important. And look what's still in 2021 is the most used metric, of course, the journal impact factor. And here you have the reasons not to change, again, from this report from the European University Association. It could be the complexity of research assessment reform, but also, let's say, the lack of good practice. So that's why we are seeing from now on some new directions, meaning some good practice, some good example in alternative ways of evaluating research. This one, again, is a report from a high-level expert group published in 2019, indicator frameworks for fostering open knowledge practices in science and scholarship. And it's a rich report. You will find 4 toolbox of indicators about infrastructures, open knowledge capabilities, pioneering open knowledge practices, and individual indicators for careers. Why I say it's rich? Because the report is like this. So it's really a good starting point if you want to discuss some alternative in research evaluation. Then you have, of course, the report in 2017, Evaluation of Research Careers, Fully Acknowledging Open Science Practices. Why I underline the year in which these reports were published? Because in Italy, they are almost unknown, or at least they are unknown where it counts, which is at ANVUR. And I can say it because I witnessed and I asked, but do you know this report? And the answer was no. Why it's important, this report? Because it presents this matrix. So the concept is matrix and not metrics. In assessing your research, according to your seniorship, meaning here you are an early career researcher, here you are a full professor, you have to take into account all these aspects: teaching and supervision, service and leadership. Research output is just one of the components of the matrix. Again, new directions. This is the DORA declaration. I don't know if you are familiar with DORA. I think so. It's the declaration that individuals and institutions can sign. And once signed, you should not use the ranking logic in evaluating research. Not only the impact factor, but also the idea of ranking journals, okay? And recently, in December, they published case studies, okay? Very, very short, like just a record on what, why, and how this institution changed or tried to change their evaluation system. And what I find particularly interesting is the Dutch one, because you see it's a place, I'm sorry, there is this thing here, but anyway, room for anyone, okay? So their criteria are enable the diversification of career paths, promoting excellence in each of the key areas, and the key areas are also leadership, patient care for medical centers, and so on. Focusing on quality, achieving balance between individuals and the collective, stimulating open science, and stimulating academic leadership. So these are all good examples and all best practice. And what I like the most is the University of Utrecht vision, which is this flower. They call the triple model, consisting of 6 components: team spirit, research, impact, professional performance, leadership, and education, okay? Because it takes into account, let's say, 360 degree of what you are doing within academia, okay? And not just publication. For the future, this morning, I had to add this slide to the presentation, because this morning at the Berlin Open Science Conference, Hilary Hanau from RDA presented this new project, which is the Open Science Registry. At the moment, it's empty, of course, but it will be a registry of alternative way of rewarding and how to give incentives for open science, okay? And this is some, let's say, the approach. Integrity of research should be evaluated, not just the products, okay? So this is an important message. So just to finish, let's have a quick look on what's going on in Europe, because it's important. As I was telling you before, I think this national agency, ANVUR, is keeping us underground. I don't know if you remember this movie. It was from the 80s, and what was dealing with the war in the former Yugoslavia. And there were these people kept really underground from a bunch of people who didn't tell them that the war was finished, okay? And I feel that ANVUR is doing exactly the same, because something is going on in Europe. If you want to have an overview of the, let's say, the policies of the European Commission in the last 15 years toward openness, please read this paper. What is relevant for us is, again, this concept of the shift, the prime focus of researchers from publishing toward knowledge sharing. And to do so, we need to change the reward and incentive system for researcher. Again, this is the key, okay? Then we have the recommendation. So this is an official document from the Commission. The recommendation of 25 April 2018, point 9 is exactly on incentive and rewards. Member states, I think that Italy is still a member state, should ensure that as a result of these policies, the academic career system supports and rewards researchers who participate in a culture of sharing. Research and career evaluation systems are enriched through the introduction of additional indicators and metrics that can inform assessment on openness, okay, including, but not only, the social impact of research, okay? So this is an official document of the Commission. Then we have the so-called Open Data Directive, which enlarge the scope of the previous public sector information to research data. So now research data should be open. And why shouldn't they count as a research output? Again, we have the European strategy for data. Again, the principle should be as open as possible, as close as necessary. And you need to make your data fair. If you want, we can have 10,000 conversations about fair data, 10,000 courses on fair data. But it takes time to make your data fair. So why shouldn't they count as research output? And then we have the EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud. I used to say this will be the future of European research. Actually, it's the present of European research, because on December the 17th, 2020, we hold the first General Assembly. So the EOSC is officially there, and we can't miss this train, okay? The EOSC is not an open cloud for science, is a supporting environment for open science. So Italy, which is really behind, ages behind with respect to other countries, should go for this shift towards open science. If not, we will be excluded from the European Open Science Cloud, which means from the next funding for research in Europe. This is the EOSC Objective 3. You see open science practices becoming the new normal. And data should be fair by design. This is another important, let's say, message from the EOSC. Fair means findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. As I told you, we don't have time to go into details, but we can have all the conversation and the courses you want about fair data. It's also a professional opportunity for, let's say, high-level professional, because you need to be a data steward. You need to have domain competencies. So the perfect profile of a data steward is a PhD, okay? And we will need 500,000 data stewards in Europe to manage fair data for the EOSC. In Horizon Europe, you know that we will have the missions. So missions are by definition interdisciplinary, so they will suppose fair and open data. And also the policies about openness will be reinforced with respect to Horizon 2020, Horizon 2020. We have Open Research Europe. So the Commission had a public procurement for this publication platform. So it's not a journal, it's a publication platform with preprints and open peer review. Open Research Europe won't have an impact factor because the logic is completely opposite. So you can see here in the yellow box, shift the way research and researchers are evaluated by supporting research assessment based on the intrinsic value of the research rather than the venue of publication. So Open Research Europe, ORE, can be really a game changer. It's available right now for submission. It's open for submission. It will be launched officially at the end of March. It can be a game changer, okay? This is how it works with preprint and open peer review, and costs are transparent. So every article costs to the Commission 780 euros. Then we have Plan S. In Plan S, the funder commit that when assessing research outputs, they will value the intrinsic merit of the work and not consider the publication channel, its impact factor, or the publisher, okay? So that's why also Plan S is so important. And in Italy, okay, we could have a new player, which is the Ministry of Research. In 2019, we started sort of, let's say, gold spring for the 6th month, the first 6 months. We started webinars, internal training, events, and we set a commission to draft a national plan for open science. And the keywords were coordination and strategy. Then, as you know, we changed 4 ministries in 18 months. So we went through a period of standby. Now, maybe with the new minister, we will see a new dawn. But anyway, we have a national plan open science, which was drafted by a commission on open science, including representative from the associations you see, from the entities you see here, including ANVUR. It was announced in the National Program for Research issued at the beginning of 2021. Chapter 6 is about, it's a sort of extended abstract of the National Plan Open Science, which will be launched soon, I hope, as a standalone document. The National Plan Open Science is structured along 4 axes: open access to text, fair data, evaluation, of course, and community engagement. So the sooner they publish it and the sooner the ministry start, let's say, investing on it, the better. What about this awful national exercise? You know that there is Article 8 about open access, which is just accessory, let's say, and it's not so clear. So the rules are confusing, and also how to comply is about confusing. Have you seen they issued the rules on how to comply at the beginning of February? If you have different options. If your paper is already open access, you just have to put the URL. All the same if your paper is under embargo, you have just to put the URL. But can we bet how many papers published in 2015, 2019, which is the reference time span for the national exercise, will be still embargoed in 2022? I can say no more than 10, okay? But the masterpiece is the third option, which is no open access allowed. So you have to justify, and you have 3 options. The first one is the work is embargoed after 2022. The paper is not funded by public money by 50%, and other. So you have 200 characters to explain why you are not uploading an open access version, which is nonsense. Every policy has opt-out clauses, but they are closed. In Horizon 2020, you have 5 opt-out clauses and no other. So if you don't know what to write in this other field, I can make a suggestion taken from the Blues Brothers movie. And that's all. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your patience, because I think I got a bit long. But anyway.
Thanks for this interesting, I would say, really kind of overwhelming landscape of all the things related to open science. I always think that I kind of get all the branches that I can think about, but there's always something new that I did not consider. So I think we have room for questions. So there are 2 ways to ask questions. First way is to just book, let's say, a place in the question queue just by writing question in the chat. And The other way is to write down the full question or comment in the chat. There is already, if you don't want to appear on screen, there is already one question. I'm going to read it aloud from Antonino Vallesi, which says, just read it aloud. Of course, I agree with everything Dr. Giglia said. However, I have difficulty understanding how concretely we could evaluate open science practices. For example, what about the quality, accuracy of data sets, codes, scripts, preprint, shared with the community before and without formal and high quality peer review? Who's going to judge the value or quality and not only quantity of these outputs and according to which criteria? The risk is that these practices, while highly valuable in principle, could multiply exponentially the burden of evaluators and bureaucratize the evaluation system even more in a sort of an uncontrollable vicious loop. Any opinion on that?
Yes, so for the first part of the question, I think we have already seen in the slides. So what about the quality, accuracy of data set, etc.? It will be increased because as we saw in the example of the two papers about hydroxychloroquine published in Lancet and in the New England Journal of Medicine, which are two of the most prestigious journals in medicine, they had passed traditional peer review. So it's not high quality peer review, the traditional one. And they were, let's say, let's put it this way, found guilty by public scrutiny. So having a preprint and then open peer review is much more efficient than having just two, or let's say two pair of eyes looking at your article. And if you go back to the slide to the 43% ratio of retractions about falsified and fabricated data, they were published in high-ranking peer-reviewed journal. Okay, so I think this is not an issue. All the more so because if everything is open, what's the interest from a researcher perspective? What's the interest in putting into the wild, let's say, in making open a study, a data set, a workflow, whatever, which is not scientifically sound? Because one of what you expect from scholarly communication is to be recognized as the expert, right? So what's your interest in putting into the wild something which is not scientifically sound? Okay, if everything is open, you must be really careful on what you put in the open. Okay, so I think this is my opinion on this reflection on this question.
We are going to publish it as it happened, with very few cuts and edits on YouTube, CIMEC YouTube channel, as all the other open science seminars we had the last 2 or 3 years, I think. I would also have a quick comment while we're waiting for maybe other comments.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was looking. I was seeing that Arianna Brancaccio is putting a question.
Okay, so.
But anyway, go ahead. Maybe she is typing.
Oh, okay. Arianna,
I'm ready to talk when, like, go.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, Victor. Okay, I go then. No, thank you very much. It was super interesting, and personally, I didn't find the content of the talk disturbing at all. So actually,
that's great. Thank you.
Actually, you stressed how much embracing open science, cannot be dissociated from the economic interests behind scientific research. So you stress the presence of this great competition among researchers, right? A competition which is like realistically due to a lack of resources, of course. Yeah. And competition, like uncertainty, are not the best scenario, let's say, to embrace the new like open science approaches. So I was wondering how and how long you think this urge to publish, this anxiety to publish, will prevent researchers from embracing, let's say, open science methods rather than more mainstream publication paths?
It's a sort of tricky question. Let me go back, which is quite difficult this way. Let's go this way. Let's go back to the Open Science Rainbow. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. I don't have the, you know, I can see, I can foresee the future. I think, however, that in Horizon Europe, the policies, the open policies requested by the European Commission will be even more, let's say, mandatory. If you say, if you can say more mandatory, I don't know, but anyway, they will be more stringent as before. And I think, because in a webinar, Kostas Glinos, who now is the head of unit of open science at the research general direction in Brussels, told us that they are trying to change also the evaluation system. So maybe really starting in Horizon Europe, so the current research framework program in Europe, you could be evaluated on open science practices. So there is hope. There is hope. However, for the time being, is not mutually exclusive. I mean, if research criteria are published on high impact factor journal, you have to publish on high impact factor journal if you want to make a living out of your research, okay? And if you want to have a career in academia. It does not mean that you can't use each one of these tools to open up your research. I mean, you can publish in the high impact factor journal, and then you can self-archive with the allowed version in a repository, for instance, in IRIS, in the institutional repository. You can share your data, because once they are published, okay? So you can share the data underpinning your paper. You can share the code you use to generate the data. You can pre-register your experiment. I mean, anything which is not asked by the current research evaluation criteria is not forbidden, okay? So if you have to publish there, perfect, publish there, but then you can open whatever you want. And I can assure you that it takes 5 minutes to deposit a data set, 5 minutes to pre-register an experiment. And by the way, it's this pre-registration can be seen as tricky. Oh, I'm going to be scooped. But actually is the contrary. If you pre-register your experiment, or if you share, as you see in the first line, you share your grant proposal, you might find a funder. You might find collaboration. You might find new partners for your proposal. And once you have pre-registered your experiment, or once you have shared your grant proposal, you have a date, let's say a fixed date given by the repository, saying that on February the 18th, you were the one proposing this research. So I think you need to go to get familiar with all these tools and start using them. because you can use all these tools notwithstanding the current research criteria. I don't know, Arianna, if I
you absolutely did. Like what you said right now is exactly what I was thinking. Like in general, because of the competition, you talked about earlier, we tend to, like we don't see like these type of approaches to research like very reassuring, let's say, because we're always afraid that people could use our data to do, for example, a type of research that we were planning to do or stuff like that. But the way you put it, let's say, is more reassuring.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. And
Indeed.
sorry, Victoria, for
Indeed. But also keep in mind that, for instance, if you deposit your dataset in Zenodo, you can also set an embargo period. I mean, your data become fair, accessible, but not open. Accessible means that if another researcher is interested in your data while they are still embargoed, and you decide about the embargo, even 3 years, 2 years, the time you need to fully exploit your data. But if another researcher needs to see your data, he or she has to ask you, okay? And then maybe a collaboration can rise. It happened to me, okay? With a researcher, a professor of medicine in Argentina. Never met before, never seen before. He saw a paper, he contacted me, and we wrote a paper together. So it happens, okay? It's let's say a virtuous circle.
Other questions? Thanks.
Yeah. Hi. No, it was just a comment. That's why I wrote it. Just thank you, because I think that, so I'm in charge of promoting these practices in my department in the UK. And I have to say, I was quite surprised by the resistance that I found from colleagues. So I think that the question you asked in the beginning, why do you do research? I found it like a great moral nudge. And because that's the ultimate question, really. And so yeah. I just to say that I will be using that in my next workshops. I will start with it. I will quote you, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you, because you are confirming that it's important to reflect. And I have to tell you that when I use this this question at the beginning of a course for PhD students, and I ask them, please then drop me an email with your reflections on this question. And I received an email which I forwarded to my rector, because this young early career researcher, and she wrote, it's important to keep in mind this question, because I'm in the second year of my PhD, and I'm already stuck in this publish mechanism. But when I started, I started for, let's say, the benefit of the world, and I wanted to do research for the benefit of the world. So, and I forwarded this email to my rector, which found it very, let's say, interesting. Yeah. And yeah, so thank you for the feedback. It's important for me.
Thank you.
Sara Garofalo, floor is yours.
Yeah, hi, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. So yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It was brilliant, if I may say. And I'm interested, since now I'm working in Italy as a researcher, I'm obviously interested in the Italian situation, and you talked a lot about that. And you were mentioning the fact that with the evaluation of research in Italy, we are very far from changing the way our research is evaluated, and I think everything adds up to that. I mean, as long as our research is evaluated in a specific way, we will not see a big change in our practices, and only people who are sensible to these topics will actually make this effort. So my question is, because you said that the ANVUR is is a little bit behind on this track, but on the other hand, you also mentioned that the ANVUR is involved in these new reports that were, addressed to our ministry. So I don't really know much about that. And my question is, so at what point how far are we from seeing this change in the way we are evaluated here in Italy? And most importantly, what can we do to make that happen? So I think if even us, this Italian researcher, can do something to push towards this direction. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's again, I can't foresee the future. If you want a bit of, let's say, background about this national plan open science, it was drafted in the first version. It was drafted at the beginning of 2019. So at the time, the president of ANVUR was Paolo Miccoli. So I would say that ANVUR was involved in the first draft. But not in the second. Also because in the meanwhile, Paolo was no longer president, okay? So he finished this term. But anyway, also the reason why you find this Article 8 in the ANVUR, let's say in the VQR, how do you translate bando, let's say, rules? No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, is because Paolo insisted to put the open access within the rule for the next VQR. The problem is either the ministry, the new minister, you know that she was appointed last week, so it's really brand new, newborn minister. Either the new minister see the value, because you know open science is really transformative, and either she sees the value of open science, either she sees the opportunity of the open science cloud and the FAIR data. And so she starts acting, okay, towards more openness, or we will be left behind. So I hope we are working. We are preparing a short, let's say, a short document just to engage and to put open science again on the agenda at the ministry. And by the way, I have to tell you that the second draft of this open science plan saw the participation of Roberto Caso, who is professor in your university. And he was also part, because you know he is the coordinator of ISA, the Italian association to support open science. So he was involved either in the first and in the second drafting.
But so you mean the University of Trento, right?
Trento, yeah.
Okay, no, I'm from the University of Bologna.
But anyway,
open to everyone. Yeah, okay. So
anyway, so Roberto is at the University of Trento.
Trento,
yeah, but so we are trying to put open science again on the agenda, because what is missing in Italy is coordination. What you see here, coordination. Because even though the ministry start, let's say, a policy on open science, but ANVUR does not change the criteria, we are again at square one. Okay, so it's coordination that we need. And we also need, let's say, to be more aware about what's going on in Europe. Let's say to align to what is going on in Europe.
Yeah.
Because we are really, if you ever look at all the high-level expert group, all the working groups, you will rarely see an Italian name. Because we have no experts, we have no champions, we have no professors really involved in doing open science. Yeah. So it's really difficult in Italy. I can tell you, because it's...
This is what I meant when I asked, what can we do? I mean, it's probably also our responsibility as, researchers to push more about this change.
Definitely, because if you push, if you push, for instance, for your rector, with your rector, if you push in the department, let's say, to put on the agenda of the department or of the university the open science issue, it will be important. I can tell you two more things. Sorry, I know I could speak about open science for hours, but what worked at the University of Milan was the policy. But for instance, at the University of Bologna, now you have an open access policy. And setting, on the basis of the policy, setting an institutional commission. So they have a commission on open science, including a representative from each department. They meet once a month, and once a month, all the representatives are due or are meant to put one point in the agenda at the Consiglio di Dipartimento.
Yeah.
Okay. So and that's and it worked well, because it's important to put open science in the agenda within the departments. So let's say in 2021 we are starting a pilot project on data, or whatever, and it worked well. And what worked well, and if you want, I can send you the link, is the building of open science community within university. It started at the University of Utrecht, and now they have a network in the Netherlands, because in each university and in each research performing organization in the Netherlands, they have an open science community. And the open science community is made by researchers. So no librarian, no technicians, it's just researchers, or if you want librarians, but just as, you know, to enable and to maybe create awareness or so on. But the aim of this community is the sharing of best practices. Because what I get from your reflections, from all the reflection, is that you might feel alone. Yeah. If you build a community, you see that there are other people out there trying to do what you are doing. And of course, I firmly believe in dialogue. I firmly believe in conversation. So maybe having a community also, you can get suggestions. You can get, oh, I've never thought of it, but I can do it. So again, this idea of creating community within university would be really important. And if you are interested, we can create and we can start, let's say, a network of potential communities within university. That would be great.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. Count me in.
Yeah.
There is also another question. I think we are a bit running out of time, but would Fiamma Serra, floor is yours. If you want to appear on screen.
Yes. Yeah, I will be super quick. Thanks. First of all, thanks for the talk. It was really interesting and refreshing for me too. And then my question was about, so in one of your slides, you managed, when redefining the concept of excellence, you managed also parameters such as mentorship and leadership. And since I'm a student, I was interested, I was curious whether, you know, if there are some, I don't know, platforms or, let's say, ways in which this is happening. Like, I think it's tricky to actually measure and evaluate the leadership of a person, for example, or its ability to have an efficient mentorship. So I was curious whether there were already, maybe in Europe, platforms to measure these parameters, or how to do that, basically, if you had any idea on how to measure these parameters.
No, not as far as I know, because as you can imagine, we are really at the beginning of this process. Okay, but what I would say is that maybe you could find something here. This report about indicator framework for fostering open knowledge. It's very, let's say, not complex, but very detailed. Okay, so maybe you can find the answer here. I can have a look and maybe come back with an answer. For the moment, I would say if you find something, you could find something here.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's better now?
Yeah, better.
Okay.
Thank you. Because
Sorry.
I didn't get what you said last.
I was just saying that if there are no other questions, but I think in the chat, I don't see any other comments or booking, let's say. So I think that we could end the meeting now. The recording of the meeting would be published on CIMEC YouTube channel. And I think I'll thank again Elena Gilia for this interesting, thought-provoking, and whatever you can label this presentation. It's very difficult to define this spectacular overview of all these concepts. So thanks again.
Thank you. And again, thank you for inviting. And if you want to go into details about the EOSC or the FAIR data or whatever, of course, I'm at your disposal.
Thanks. And so keep following the CIMEC UnityN Twitter account, where we post all the events we are going to host, both in open science and all the other scientific activities of the center. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.